name is Ludvig. I work with a company called Mandara Spa, and most people haven't heard of us because we blend into whatever organization we work with. What my company does is we run spa operations, but we're known as many different names throughout our industry. Our parent company is called Steiner, and chances are that if you've been a guest on board a cruise ship and you've been to a spa, you've been to one of our spas regardless of who that cruise ship provider is. If you've been in a large-scale resort, frequently those resorts will contract out spa services to a company like ours because it's such a specialized field to be in. So what I get asked a lot is when I'm attending a job fair as a recruiter is what do you look for with candidates that are applying to be in the spa industry? Do you need spa experience? And frequently we get employees and we need employees who have customer service background, because if you're working in a position where, as we like to say in our industry, you're putting your hands on someone's body, you're a massage therapist, you're a cosmetologist, you're an esthetician, there are certain qualifications that we look for. But outside of that, we need people to answer our phones, we need people to do accounting, we need people to work in our lounges and our locker rooms, right, for towels and that sort of thing. And oftentimes I get asked, well, do those positions need experience? Well, they need life experience and they need work experience. And we can train you on many of the particulars of how to work in a spa. But I was asked to come talk to you about the art of interview, and I'm going to use some of those examples to tell you about how you can paint your canvas, so to speak. There was a gentleman here earlier, a couple speakers ago, who talked about the importance of a professionally and well-written resume, right? What did you take away from that? Keep it short. What's that? I can't.
It needs to pop out so someone will call you back.
Yeah, that's the big one right there, is that if you're getting that phone call, so our talk today is post that phone call, you've done your resume, you're going in to talk to someone. I guarantee you they've already searched and they have found your resume, something has stood out from your resume that has warranted a conversation. As that gentleman mentioned, most business people, even HR people, we're not sitting around thinking, okay, today's a good day to do interviews, I think maybe we'll waste time. They're really looking to fill that position. So it's as valuable to you as it is to them. We as a business need employees just as much as you need that job in order for both sides to function. So an interview is your chance to paint that canvas. Just like an artist starts out with a blank canvas, what you're looking to do is give that potential employer a picture of what you are like as a person. That's what the interview is about. It's a conversation with open-ended questions, hopefully, which will give you a chance to explain your resume, because the resume is a document that the potential employer is going to use to make a very quick decision whether or not they're going to contact you for this potential vacancy. And we have a table over here where if you'd like some help or some tips on your resume, I volunteer with the Society for Human Resources Management Hawaii, and we're over here to help you if you want some tips on things you should put in or not put on your resume. But before your interview, we had someone in here that was talking about dressing for success. So important to look the part, right? Making sure that you have your resume that's effective. I recommend keeping your resume to about 1 page if at all possible, because what that does is it gives that potential employer just a quick rundown of what you are like as a potential employee, some of the things you've done, what fields you've worked in, and it sparks their interest. When you come in and you talk to that potential employer, whether it's an HR person, whether it's a business owner, whether it's the department manager, that's your opportunity to really talk more about the skills that you have. They're going to ask you about those skills, and you can really then sell yourself, which is what the interview is all about. Before you go into that interview, knowing the organization just a little bit. What does the organization do? Right? You don't want to go on an interview and not know what that company is all about. And it might be a very specialized company, it might be the division of a much larger entity, but knowing just a little bit about that organization, what do they make? What are they responsible for? Who do they contract with, right? That's so important, because then during the interview, you can talk about why you would be a good fit for that organization. And I, as an employer, if I hear that potential employee talking to me about some of the things that we do in our business already, it shows that they've done their research. And it shows, for me, a trend of what I would expect out of them once they're on board. So that's really important. Some other basics is know who you're meeting with, so that when you show up, you're asking for a specific person, right? Where is the interview? Knowing the location, very important, so that you're not late. And when is the meeting scheduled? Showing up on time. As a general rule of preference, I say try not to come too early, because I know when I'm talking to someone that they're nervous. It's normal. But if you come 30 minutes early, there's a good chance that I'm still in another meeting or I'm finishing up another interview. You know, just get there on time or get there a few minutes before. But definitely don't be late. Sometimes the interviewer will run a few minutes late because they're taking care of things, but they're not doing it to you intentionally to make you wait. But you should not be late as the applicant. Have a mentally rehearse before you go into that interview why you want that job. When I talked with candidates that want to come work in the spa industry, we get candidates who are very experienced massage therapists or cosmetologists or estheticians. And they tell me about some of the other places they've worked and why they want to work at one of our particular spas. The spa that we have on Oahu contracts with Hilton Hawaiian Village. So we're at one of the largest resorts in the state. We're the largest spa in Waikiki. And generally people outside of our industry, they haven't heard of us, but they've heard of Hilton Hawaiian Village. And I asked them, why do you want to work here? What kinds of things would you say if you were wanting to work at a spa?
Someone relax.
What's that?
Help someone relax. And
Yeah.
have a good time.
To help people relax. That's why people come to a resort spa like ours. They come because they're in it for rest and relaxation. So someone who wants to help customers, you know, I tell them you're going to be dealing with a lot of people who are here on vacation. So sometimes they run late to appointments. Right? They're out at the beach or they're out at the pool, they're doing their other island activities. This isn't what they're living and breathing for just for today. They've got other things going on. Making sure that they leave with a positive experience, because our client is Hilton, you know, large worldwide organization. We need to impress our client because we're on a contract with them. We've been in the resort for over 11 years, you know, but Hilton could say if we don't have professional employees who are treating our customers right, you know, we're going to end your contract. So understanding why you want to work at that organization, really important, even if it's just a few sentences, because that's a question that may come up. Why do you want to work here? What made you choose having a conversation with us? And good things to say, you know, are talking about the company, how you would be an asset. Not, oh, well, you answered my ad on Craigslist, so I got called for the interview, here I am. And there's not a right or wrong answer, but have something in the back of your mind that you want to pull out and use. During your interview, what are some of the things that you want to do to highlight yourself? Because again, it's a conversation, right? And you're trying to make sure that the person who's on the other side of that desk leaves that conversation with a better idea of who you are and how you would fit into that organization. So how about your body language? What does your body language say about you?
Be open and relaxed.
Yeah. Be open, try to be relaxed. It is nerve-wracking, but interviewing is one of those things that the more you do it, you get better and better at it, hopefully, right? You start to practice, and it starts to become easier. Just like, you know, picture the analogy of riding a bicycle when you were a kid, right? You get on, it's a little wobbly at first, and once you get going, after a few months, it becomes really easy, it becomes second nature. And you almost know going in sort of what to expect, and you know how to talk about, you know, the skills and abilities that you can bring to the organization. But body language is so important. If you're sitting there and if you are, for example, a person who's timid or shy, you might have the perfect skills and abilities for that job, but if you don't sell those skills and abilities, that employer won't know that you have them. So crossing your arms, you know, slouching in your chair, probably things that you want to stay away from. What are some of the ways that you can display body language to show that you are interested in what the person is saying to you, or that you're interested in working at that particular place? What's that?
Keeping eye contact.
Keeping eye contact, that's really important. Yeah. What else can you do? Sit up straight. Right? What else?
Slightly leaning forward to show interest.
To show interest, right? A really good trick is sometimes to repeat back what the person is saying, but not like when you were kids and you played copycat, right, or anything like that. But maybe reading back some of what they're saying. So my understanding is you want someone who can work Saturdays from 3 to 9 p.m. and the position is alternating weekends, or anything that shows that you are processing what they're saying. Because again, that interview, believe it or not, you're on the spot. That recruiter or that HR person or that business owner, they're focused hopefully on only you at that moment. So you want to give that person your undivided attention. And chances are that, like the gentleman said that was here earlier for resume writing, they've whittled down their stack of resumes. Something stood out from that resume that you sent to show that you were a viable candidate for that position. So they might have started out with 100 resumes that got submitted, and they've whittled it down to probably no more than 10 by the time they start doing interviews. A lot of employers too, they will keep a resume database so that when they have positions that come available, if it's a position that they hire for very frequently, you may not get the job the first time, but they might call you. I do this a lot when we only have one position open at that time, but let's say we interview 5 really great candidates. I'll call them and I'll tell them, we didn't select you this time around, but within the next 3 months, I anticipate that we'll be going through another hiring situation. Would it be okay if we keep in touch? So like the person who was here earlier talking about networking, that's an in that you have with that organization to be able to talk with them a little bit more. So all of these are different pieces of the puzzle that kind of all come together, right, during the course of your job search process. Speaking clearly is really important so that the person who is on the other side of the table can understand you, right? Take your time. When you're nervous, you will have a tendency sometimes to speak faster and wanting to get it all out there, right? It happens. I understand that people, when they sit in front of us, sometimes they might be nervous. In my field, we deal a lot of times with people who are really good at working on other human beings. For example, if you take massage therapy. So my field is kind of specialized in HR, but massage therapists generally, they're lousy at interviewing because why? When they're in a room and they're working on a person, the person's generally falling asleep. After the first 10 minutes, there's no more talking. There's no more human interaction, right? So they're really, really good healers at what they do when they've got their hands on someone, but they're not necessarily good at selling that skill. So for that particular position, because I know the personality type, we will do an interview and we'll try to get them to rest, and not be too nervous. But then we do a practical exam, which is as part of, the interview process. So then we give them a chance to show what they can do as far as their skill set. And then we weigh the two and we see if they're a good fit for the organization. The person conducting the interview is going to be looking for skills that you have that can be applied directly to that job. So if you're working, for example, in a restaurant situation, they're going to be looking not necessarily for a restaurant background on your resume, but do you have customer service skills that can then translate into the job that they have? Have some of you worked in really specialized jobs? I heard someone saying that they had been with the same employer for 20 years, right? And you might think, oh no, now I have to go out into the workforce and I have to interview, and it's just a painful process, right? But those 20 years of experience that you had with that one employer, as the gentleman that was here earlier said, you're going to want to highlight some of the ways that you made that place better after you left it during those 20 years. And there's nothing wrong with that. We see people in the recruiting world in all walks of life, with limited work experience, with lots of work experience. Sometimes we see people that have very specialized work experience that are changing careers. It's all in how you explain it. And if you're able to come up with a good explanation, there's not a magic answer that I can give you, but an explanation that suits your personal circumstances, you've got it made, right? Don't get too personal during the interview process. And unfortunately, this is something that we see quite a bit, where the employer or potential employer, they're looking to hear about what your knowledge, your skills, your abilities are as they relate to that job. They don't necessarily want to hear that every other Saturday you cat sit for your friend who works at this company where they can't, come home and feed the cat and you have to go take care of that, right? It's an example of that. What are some of the other ways you may not want to get too personal? Yeah. Stick to the topic, which is the interview process, right? Getting through that. What are some other examples?
Financial issues, family issues.
Yes, very good. Yeah, sometimes I ask people, why do you want this job? And you know what I hear a lot? I need the paycheck, right? So I always joke with people during our new hire orientation. I tell them, you've signed up for our volunteer program, right? And they say, no, no, no. And they're nervous because it's their first day. So I say, no, I'm just joking. But most people, well, of course, we're working because we need the paycheck. But there are various ways that you can explain, I need the paycheck. I like to be challenged. I'm looking for a better opportunity. I need to, make a higher income to take care of the needs of my family. It's all in how you package that situation, right? So you don't want to get too personal. I've had people during the interview process, unfortunately, get very emotional, right? And you want to make sure that if you're if you're going to get really emotional, you're probably not going to come off in the best light with that potential employer, right? By no means do you want to badmouth prior supervisors, prior employers, current employers. Again, it's all in how you're painting that blank canvas. When I meet someone for the first time in an interview process, it's a blank piece of paper, it's a blank canvas. And I'm trying to find out different pieces of the puzzle and how that person would fit in. If I hear you're talking stink about your former employer, if you're applying for a job in the same industry, chances are pretty good that I know that former employer of yours, or that I know that HR person at that company, right? So you may be offending people that recruiter or that HR person knows, or that business owner knows. It's a small place, right? And it's very incestuous in that regard. But also, it gives me a clue as to how you would behave if things don't necessarily go your way in the workplace. So you don't want to do that. Even if you had a horrible experience at a past job that was legitimate, save that for a later conversation when you're already hired, and if there's an appropriate time and place to bring that up. But for the most part, it's a better conversation with your family or your friends or people that are there, to support you in that way. What I'm looking for as an employer is, are you a good cultural fit for our organization? And one of the things that I tell people is, at our organization, your title may be X, but on our job descriptions, we have, other duties as assigned by supervisor, which sometimes means that if your job isn't to fold towels, we might need you to fold towels that day. If your job is not to answer phones and the phone's ringing and you're walking by it, you may need to answer that phone. So I'll throw questions out there to see, for example, what you've done at your prior jobs to see if you've been able to step outside the box, because we're an organization that runs lean and mean. And you'll see that a lot with companies these days, is that they're doing a lot more with less people, right? The jobs that used to belong to one person, now you've got one person doing the job of what 3 people used to do before. We see that a lot. So it means that the job description is sometimes all over the map just for companies to be able to stay in business. So be prepared to talk to a potential employer about how you've been able to step outside the box, or how you can step out of your comfort zone. And be prepared to offer examples. At my last job, when someone called in sick or someone was on a leave of absence, I had to step in and I took care of their job and I did mine, and give some examples of how you were able to do that successfully. Use examples of your good work ethic, right? They might ask you, what are your greatest strengths? That's an opportunity for you to talk about how you believe in getting to work on time, how at your last job you were only out once due to unexpected illness, etc. So talk about your strengths. A potential employer may also ask you along those same lines, what are some areas that you can improve upon? So just be ready for that, because none of us are perfect, right? So we always have areas that we can improve upon. Think of your last performance evaluations that you've gotten from your prior employers, and think of some of the areas that are on there where you could improve. And be able to package those in ways that show that you've worked on those over the years. What are some examples, do you think, of things we can improve upon, things that come up?
Communication.
Yeah, you might say something along the lines of, well, my prior supervisor told me that I needed to be better at written communication. So what I did is I decided to take a course on written communication in the business world. I completed that. 6 months later, when I received my next performance appraisal, I was able to highlight ways that I've improved communication in the department, XYZ, right? So you want to show that you are doing something about it to improve yourself, because as you can tell from the number of people here today as an employer, there's a few jobs and a lot of people looking for those few jobs. So you want to do whatever you can when you get in front of that interview to put the odds in your favor as much as possible. You know, and it's not Vegas style where it's a gamble, right? There's things that you can do to improve your situation as much as possible. Be prepared in a very nice way to talk about why that employer should hire you versus the other 10 or 12 candidates that they're probably looking at for the same position. And what are some of the ways that you can make that situation turn in your favor? Why should a company hire you? Dependable. What are some other attributes? What's that?
Flexible.
Yeah, flexible is a really, really big one because in this day and age, pretty much in any industry, employers are doing a lot more with less resources. So we're looking for flexibility, right? Just to give you an example, in our spa world, right, the industry that I work in is sometimes, you know, massage therapists that have worked in other resort spas over the years, they've said, well, you know, at this place they don't have to do cleaning duties, right, because they want to just go from one treatment to the next. That's how they make money, right? And we've told them, well, in our spas, we don't have people that necessarily come and clean up after you during a treatment. So in that 15-minute window that you have before your next customer, guess what? We expect you to do cleaning. But, you know, we also tag team so that people help you with no problem. But are you willing to do that? And just by getting that kind of honest feedback from someone, I can tell whether they'll be a good fit for our organization. What are some other things? I saw a couple other hands.
Having a wide range of experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Having, you know, being able to highlight for that potential employer or recruiter to say, look, I've worked in this industry, I've worked in this industry, and I've worked in this industry. I want to work in your industry because blank, and the things I can bring to your industry are my wealth of experience from working in other industries. Because often in this day and age and in this economy, you do see people making a career change after many, many years of doing something totally different. Again, it's all in how you explain it, right? So use that resume, use that cover letter to highlight that experience. Now, the Society for Human Resources Management, which is a national and global organization, they did a survey a number of years ago. And what they found out, it was a pool of about 1,000 employers and recruiters. And they realized that about 50% of the final decision to hire a candidate, all things being equal, you know, in terms of experience and all of that, 50% of it was based on what we call chemistry, the human connection. What does that tell you about an interview situation?
It's critical.
Go ahead.
If I could
Sure.
pause, I'm sorry.
No problem.
I have a navy blue Kia and parked in actually a handicap stall up front, RCG919. Is that anyone in this room? It's urgent. Okay, thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
No, no problem at all. So chemistry, that human connection, because that recruiter may decide, yes, this person should interview with the department manager, they should interview with the general manager, you know, they can pass you on to another person within the organization. You know, when I've worked in other hospitality industries, oftentimes you might get a candidate who's coming in interviewing for X, right, because that was the job that was posted. But you may not know as a candidate that as a recruiter, I may be looking for jobs A, B, and C also in the back of my mind because they're coming up over the next few months. So don't shy away from applying for something that you think you might be able to do. Someone referenced here earlier Hawaiian Airlines as an example, right? Large employer, growing nonstop. You read about them in the news. They're constantly on the up, right? They're adding new routes. They're adding new planes. That's a company that's really becoming, and they've turned around completely from becoming a company that was bankrupt twice to becoming a company that's an employer of choice, right? So let's say if you wanted to work for that company but you don't have prior experience in the airline industry, what are some of the things you could do to highlight your resume?
Volunteer.
Your volunteer experience, maybe your experience working in hospitality, maybe your experience working with other people, right? And be prepared, when we talked about flexibility earlier, be prepared that sometimes employers may just offer you part-time to start. Because guess what they're trying to do by offering you part-time to start? They're saving money, yes, and they're seeing if you're flexible, right? But we do this a lot in my industry. Sorry? Training. And they're really checking you out to see how you perform when you come on board. In some of our positions in my industry, I tell candidates from the get-go, the part-time is where we start. If your goal is to get 40 hours a week and get benefits out of us, give yourself about 3 to 6 months. I promise that if you want full-time pretty much at the end of those 3 to 6 months, there's going to be some kind of opening. It may not be exactly what you want, but you'll get those 40 hours. And what we want to see in your first few months is how you're performing. Are you able to grasp the training? Are you able to be a good fit for the organization? So like I was saying, about 50% of the final decision, just my opinion and the opinion of Society for Human Resources Management, chemistry. They also surveyed these same HR professionals and talked about deal breakers during interviews. And some of the deal breakers were provocative or inappropriate dress. So we had someone here that covered the importance of dressing for success. Grammatical mistakes on resume. So please, check over your resumes very carefully. The gentleman that was here talking about resume writing had a really good point in that he said, sometimes you can use that same resume throughout the years, but periodically when you pull it out, dust it off when you're looking for a job and you look at it, you might see something on there that you could have said differently or said better. So have it be as a job, resume can be a work in progress. Being late for the interview is a big no-no, right? Be on time. If you for some reason cannot be on time, call ahead. Because we understand, sometimes things happen, traffic happens, family situations happen, but don't just no-show if you want to work for that company. I mentioned earlier talking negatively about prior employers and supervisors. Definitely stay away from that one. And being overly casual was also cited as a deal breaker. Because again, you're giving a sales pitch on yourself during the interview. And when I interview someone as an HR person, up here I'm trying to do all the talking because I have 30 minutes to give you all this information, right? But in an interview process, I'm typically going to ask you open-ended questions and give you a chance to ask me questions about the company because I'm trying to get to know you. And the way I get to know you is not by me doing all the talking. So typically that's what you'll find a lot more and more these days with companies.